Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest McInnes Marketing Minute. I am back from Hawaii. No, I'm back from the Bahamas. Jay is in Hawaii. We'll get to that shortly, but we've got a good topic for you this week. Is the market going to crash? Is the bubble going to burst? What does that look like? So I'm going to get Jay on the screen here. He has generously offered to join the conversation from Hawaii. So far, this is going smoothly. Any danger? My God. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Jay McInnes is finally on this video. Does not have the courtesy to use headphones either. There he is.
No, you're going to hear it all.
There he is. So.
You're going to hear it all. So are you filming the phone? Or are you, what's happening?
I'm screen recording on the phone, and Al is recording the phone. Yeah, it's still screen recording on the phone. We're all a go, but I don't know how much memory I have because I went cheap when I came to the iPhone memory, so therefore.
How much memory you have?
Yeah, because you babble on, so you're probably taking like gigabyte by gigabyte by gigabyte. Anyway, where to start this video? So I've already told the audience we're going to be talking about the housing bubble per se in Vancouver right now.
Don't call it that.
Is it going to burst? Is it going to collapse? What's going to happen? Where to start on that? Well, first of all, we're going to start with the fact that you owe me $103.16, and rather than pay me, you've ran like the coward you are to Hawaii.
Maui, technically.
It's in Hawaii. So just so that people all know that. That's a fuzzy view, so we can't see that view. There we go. Looks beautiful.
You is much better anyway. So.
The view of me is much better, correct. Anyway, so let's talk about, the market first and foremost. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about it's obviously at a heightened state because of things. There's no surprise there. But what is that going to look like when this eventually comes to an end?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, go. You're dying to give us your opinion.
I think we are going to see things. Well, it depends why it stops. If it's a rates-related thing, my thought is they're going to, as they've said and been pretty clear about, they're going to kick rates up, but I think they're not going to go as far as they're saying they will.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll tick up, and then they'll look at some sort of barometer, whatever they choose to look at that week, of how it's doing, and it's going to be shaky, and then they're going to tone them back down, is what I think. There's too many tangents to kind of go on at this point, but that's what I think, if it's a rates-related decision.
So I think it's going to be a couple of things. So I also think it's going to be highly rates-related, but I also think it's based on the amount of money in which the government is printing and just giving out because of the coronavirus. So I don't see it as a surprise that, as well as the real estate market going crazy, that I'm looking at you and I should be looking at the camera. I don't see it as a surprise that the real estate market is going crazy, as well as the stock market and the bonds market as well. I think that's, a lot of people have a lot more money in their pockets. And it was funny because in the Bahamas, we were just throwing that out there, by the way. We were talking to a lot of Americans, and of course, the Canada doesn't like to stray too far off from the US because obviously that affects trade, etc., etc. So then what they were saying is there's so much money being thrown out to families who don't even need it. That it's just ludicrous. And I was explaining to them a lot of the same is kind of happening here. There's a lot of money being thrown at the pandemic, etc. When that money stops, or at least gets toned back quite a lot, as well as the rates, I think that's when we'll see start of the huge changes. I mean, inflation is obviously high at the moment. They've been talking about, I think it's what, 3.9%, 4%?
Stop. If you think for a second that it's actually 3.9 and that the goddamn government is telling you a fact about that, you are heavily mistaken. Don't even bring that level of talk into this video.
The public figure. And so I remember seeing a thing about inflation, and it was actually by an economist, and they said they always compare it to things like TVs. So a TV is going to cost you 4% more. But people don't tend to see that because how often do you buy TVs? Whereas you look at goods like beef, chicken, things like that, that's where you'll see the hike. So next time you go into a Costco or something and buy your 10, 12 pack of chicken, look at what the price is versus when you were paying for it before.
Well, the other thing too is that when you look at inflation, look at what the inflation measure is actually measuring, because it's a very manipulated gauge year over year, and it doesn't include, like we talked about last week, the big things like real estate that are actual huge expenses in people's lives, and it's a percentage of the day-to-day things that they'll do. But again, depending what they're looking at, like the consumer price index it seems forever changing, and it's just, to your point, what are they using to base? If you don't buy TVs every month, you're not affected there. But if you like to buy tenderloin and it's now double a year later, like that's the sort of thing that people can look at. I mean, I think a lot of people too won't maybe notice too much. But it's just that tax that they don't need to get approved to pull from you every way possible. So I think it's definitely higher than it is stated to be, and that will bring bigger issues for, I mean, really the fixed income people on salaries and all that, because everything inflates except salaries, as we know. So they're the ones getting screwed.
So renters are going to be hit bad by this because obviously they're restricted to no rent or like rental increases to inflation, right? Was that the rule? They restricted.
It used to be, to be honest, I was talking to someone about this yesterday. I don't know if that's changed. It used to be inflation plus 2%.
Yeah, but then they stopped it to just inflation. So, but there was a point where rates were increasing by 4% a year, 4 or 5%, and back then, and that was the whole problem. So now you've got inflation at this quote-unquote 4%, 3.9%. So legally, as a landlord, you're allowed to increase that. And money has been tight. The more they're printing money, the less your money is worth. So therefore, they want more money. So I think renters are going to be hit quite a lot on that front because landlords are going to want to increase that rent, and they can legally do so.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know statistics on this, but I think it's a safe assumption that the majority of people in any given city are salaried employees. Mm-hmm. So if every single aspect of life is going up around you, other than your income, which should be common sense by now, common knowledge, I should say, it's gonna hurt. But when it comes back to real estate prices, I think the money that people are spending right now, and if it's government assisted money or not, it's going into hard assets and income producing assets, and trying to get away from the negatives of inflation and buy into assets that are reaping the positive rewards of inflation, like real estate, as we've seen. And again, I said it last week, 13 or like 20% or something in the last year increase across the country as a whole, let alone segments of specific markets and all that sort of stuff. So it's just ridiculous. So if you're out of the market and you are on a fixed income, and this market as well as the stock market, as we've touched on before, obviously real estate's a bit bigger because you're using a lot more leverage in the form of interest rates, but you're just losing day over day if you don't have assets in those categories and you're on a fixed income or salary income.
So I'm interested as well because, again, to your point, they keep on talking about the interest rates are going to go up, and they will next year, and again they're going to kick them up like you say, but what they actually make them will be two different things. But when that happens and the market does adjust, what that adjustment is going to look like. So I personally feel that prices will come down, but I think there's that disconnect because there's a lot of people, especially in Vancouver, and I feel we've had this over the last like 10, 15 years. People are always expecting prices to drop like 40%. They're like, I'm timing the market so the price drops 30, 40% and I can get in. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think what is more realistic is prices are maybe here, they're going to come to here, and then people are still going to be interested and will kind of level off. So again, I think those people who are out there trying to wait for that massive drop, I don't think it's going to happen. The adjustment will be in the small amount, even though the market crashes. Well, I don't want to say crashes either.
It depends why it goes down. I mean, could we have something catastrophic? Of course, it's a market. We're not bubbled from that completely. I think we're more bubbled from that than most cities, just due to everything. Although the government, again, adding foreign buyers tax and all that sort of stuff is reopening us up to more micro circumstance. But you have to go back. For the market to soften, why do people have to sell? So if the rates don't jump right up, and if any government is going to, no government is going to jump rates. And when I was born, I think there were 21%. Now that's obviously never going to happen.
Long time ago.
But
do carry on. That hairline shows it.
I don't know why I highlighted that, because that is a prime example of all that. But it's if they do go up, it's most people get fixed term or have rates that they can lock in. So then when you're tied in for the rest of your duration, again, typically up to 5 years. So where are things in, if you have 3 years left and it hits the fan this year, is it really going to be that bad in 2? All this. So then it comes back to, again, income. And if you don't lose your job, that's fine. But if every other expense in your life is going up because of inflation, then yeah, you could be affected. But the market isn't going to do anything drastic, in my opinion, unless people have to sell. So hopefully people aren't so stretched, so thin that they have to sell at any point. It'll happen, of course, to a certain degree, but in mass, I don't know.
Well, and so that's a reality as well. I think with the way the prices are going right now, I think consumers, especially like middle and lower class, the economy, I think that they've always been, even from the early 1900s, they've always been very open to getting themselves into debt. And I think a lot of people look at buying a house as good debt. There's a debate to be had on that, whether it's an asset or a liability and whatnot. And so to your point, I do think that there are going to be some people who have to sell because they were in over their heads. We'll see if people have taken equity from homes to purchase and then they have to sell and making money up that way. But is it going to happen on the mass scale? So again, it's the question that we always talk about as well. If you're trying to time the market, what are you trying to time? Like, have you been waiting for the last 10 years for a 40% drop, and it now drops, say, 10% in year 12 of your wait? Well, you're still down because it could still be up, say, 20% from where you started. So again, I think that's the disconnect. I think there's a lot of people waiting for that huge drop who don't necessarily realize, okay, it may not be a huge drop. It may be it's more an adjustment, I think is probably the better phrase for it. And that's essentially the time to purchase. But then again, I'm not huge in timing the market.
Because no one can do it.
Well, it's such a loose phrase and a loose term as well.
If you're keeping yourself out of the market, so with no exposure, to your prior point, to the gains of the market, up until this massive catastrophic drop that you're waiting for, again, it could go up 100% and drops 40%. You still lose.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
So it just doesn't make sense to not have exposure. And then at the end of the day, it's now if you're dealing with multiple investment properties, fair enough. But if it's your principal and you can keep paying the monthlies, then you are stupid not to buy just sooner. And again, if it goes down on paper. You can keep paying the monthlies, it's fine. It goes down for a year, 2 years, it's irrelevant, because until it comes up to that time when you have to refinance and what are the rates and can you still afford them based on current assessed value and how much does it actually move and yada yada yada, then it's just
and you bring up a good point. I think you bring up a good point that people worry about as well. Like, if you purchased a property and you can still afford the monthlies, whether the market goes up or down, if you don't buy or sell, you're not in the money or out of the money. So it doesn't matter, it's just on paper. So if you can keep paying the monthlies and keep going, you're going to see that gain in the long term. And that's exactly what we always talk about. Real estate is more of a long-term play rather than the short term.
For sure, and I find it funny because still I hear quite commonly, "Oh, my assessment went up. That's so great. Are you planning to sell?" No. So all you're doing is paying more tax based on a higher number.
Yeah.
So it's a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, unless you want to ATM the house and borrow against it, and a higher assessed value is better because they're running numbers based on a higher number. Fair enough. But again, if you're not, you're just paying that government you love so much more money, more of your heavily diluted by them money.
Well, and that's it, right? And so I think when this adjustment does take place, and these rates do get kicked up, these rates get kicked up, and maybe the money stops coming in. How much of an impact is it going to have? I don't think it's going to be on the masses enough to see those types of massive drops. Because, you're talking some people talking 30, 40, 50%. At that point, you're talking $1 million home becomes worth 500, 600, 700,000, which is just, I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're in too much of a market that if $1 million home drops to even say 900,000, there's people who jump at that just to have the opportunity.
Yeah, there's plenty of people with money, plenty of people who can access money no matter what the rates are. And with this conversation, it typically skews towards the bottom of the market.
That's it, right?
Or a 0.25 or a 0.5% increase will kill them. But I don't believe the majority of the market is stretched that thin just to get in. And having again adjustments of that size, benchmarks have to be created, which means people had to sell at
those prices,
40% loss,
100%,
and that continue for you to even be open to that. And also, I agree that's not going to happen. But let's say it does, 50% drop. Oh my God, I can get that for 500,000 now. You're not going to jump on it. You're going to wait till it's got to go 400.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Anyway, and then it'll be 700 by the time you know it. It's like the same stock market crap. It goes down, and I think it's going to go further, and then it's back up, and then you've lost the opportunity.
Yeah. I think there's too many. I think there's too many people at the top who, if prices do start to drop beyond a certain point, are ready to pounce because they've got the money. And think about it. Yeah. Think about all of the foreign. So the foreign buyers tax, 20%. Well, if the market drops 20%, it's almost like it becomes null and void anyway. So that starts fluctuating, and we all saw what the foreign buyers tax did before. So that's why when you actually look at the reality and what it actually looks like for that to happen, it's just wild and ludicrous out there. So, I think we've pretty much. Well, and that's it. And I think this mostly will affect the lower tier of people who are essentially looking at purchasing, whether they're able to, whether they're not able to. And I think the majority of buyers are not going to be affected in the way that you would in, say, like a smaller town, which is where I do see the prices kind of more stabilizing because there's not the demand, unlike Vancouver and Toronto, etc. So I would agree with you in summary. I think that the interest rates eventually, when they do get kicked, are going to make a change. I do think when they stop the when they stop the money printing, but when will they ever really stop money printing? But when they stop giving out all of these incentives and payback loans and monthly incomes and stuff, and people don't have this additional cash, because the same conversation is happening now with the stock market. Some of these PE ratios are so high, so is it about to drop? And until it does, we don't know. So I think that summarizes it. But I think we're both in agreement that if something does happen, or when something does happen, it's not going to be drastic levels like a lot of people are hoping for.
No, and I think back to the money, especially we commonly follow the states with that. So do they follow? They've been printing since 2008 consistently. So we've just got on board. Obviously not to the same level, but as a consistent. And with the current government, you're not going to, I don't see these handouts stopping, because how else is he going to buy votes?
That's it.
That's all it is.
That's it, so right? It's more money.
It's just going to, future governments and our kids are going to have to deal with those facts, I think. Unfortunately.
Not a short-term plan when it comes to purchasing real estate, that's for sure. So I think we'll leave you to enjoy Hawaii. Thank you for joining us today. I think that summarizes our conversation. And I'll see you next week. What a blessing that is, hey, that I get to come back from my vacation and the day after I see the bright, beautiful face of J. Gordon McInnes.
I don't even, it's just, it's, you should be a lot more grateful, that's for sure. But I'm going to go head out onto, can I zoom in here? Can't, I'm showing these women. But that catamaran.
Lovely, enjoy, sir, and we'll see you when you're back. And we will see you guys at the next McInnes Marketing Minute. See you later.
Bye-bye.
What's up, Kaya? How's it going? Bestie?